My name's Annie Williams. I'm from Cottage Grove, Minnesota, and I'm currently playing for Parma in Italy, and I've been with Pura Vida since 2020.
Amazing. Tell us a little bit more about your specific soccer journey. So, really quickly growing up in Minnesota, what that, just that,
Yeah.
and then your trajectory after that to where you are now.
Okay. For most of my youth career, I just played for my hometown in Cottage Grove. And during my high school years, I think for 1 year, I moved to MTA. After that, I played at South Dakota State for 4 years. And after I was done at SDSU, I started playing abroad in Costa Rica at Saprissa. And then COVID happened, so I was at home for a while. I was with Pura Vida a lot. And then after that, my first full season was in Iceland. After Iceland, I played in Sweden. And then when I was done with Sweden, I made my way to Italy for my first year. And now I am in the middle of my second year.
What position do you play, Annie? What's your primary position?
I play, a little bit of everything, but here I play outside back, either on the left or on the right, but I can also play center back, left or right. So.
What other positions have you played in your career?
Mostly defense, but I did have a couple years in college when I played left or right wing. So.
Annie, when you start like in college, I'm just gonna go through the process with this. Nice clips, by the way.
Thanks.
So when you start in college and you finish all this process, was a long process. And when do you decide to start playing professional? When was the point when you?
Yeah. I actually, I don't know, some girls will say, okay, I knew I wanted to play professionally since I was like 4 or 5. But for me, I was just kind of figuring out what my possibilities were. So as I was in high school, my first goal objective was that I wanted to play in college and I wanted to play at a D1 university. And until I was a senior in high school, I didn't know if that was going to be a possibility. So that was my main goal. And then after I got to college, my next goal was how do I become dominant here? How do I, start to be comfortable, look comfortable, and then do my best here. And so when I realized that playing a pro and playing abroad was a possibility, it was probably going into my senior year of college. So later than most people, but once I knew, I had one coach that coached me for WPSL that had played abroad himself. And after one game, he just said to me, hey, you know that you could play abroad, right? You know that you could play professionally. And from there, from that belief kind of sparked my curiosity of, okay, this is something that I could do and this is something that I want to do.
So Saprissa was the first opportunity that you had to play professional.
Yeah.
So how was that? Just going back a little bit to Costa Rica and the roots of Pura Vida. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about what Pura Vida is, how was the experience in Costa Rica and how is soccer in Costa Rica?
So my first experience with Costa Rica wasn't actually the football soccer part of it. It was studying abroad. And so I chose to study abroad in Costa Rica because I was double majoring in English education and Spanish, and I needed to finish up my Spanish major. And my mom had also lived in Costa Rica for a couple months, and she was just like, wow, it's a beautiful place, beautiful culture, way of life, okay. And so I said, okay, I'll do the same. And so I started off studying abroad, and everything, that we talk about what Pura Vida is, the soccer program, it's also, the way of life of just relax, no stress, but also at the same time, no stress doesn't mean not caring about anything. It just means being in the moment, taking everything for what it is, and I guess being grateful for what we have in the moment and making the most of it.
That's amazing. That's amazing that you can describe that the phrase Pura Vida because you were there and you had the experience of living that type of life. And also, Annie, one of the points that we want to talk today is about you are one of the girls or women who start Pura Vida like from the beginning in regards to how we train a professional player, how we build that path. So how you see like the growth here at Pura Vida, and what do you think about all this growing
Yeah.
from
Maybe,
like
yeah, talk about the first time you kind of got introduced to Pura Vida compared to what you see now.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, when I first heard about Pura Vida, like I saw it on one of my teammates' Instagram stories, and I don't know, they were just doing like fun technical drills, and I just thought, okay, like I have to train there. Like that's what I want to do. That's what I want to work on. And so at that point, we were at Pamela Park, and you just show up, train, but like, I don't know, you guys always had a vision of what you wanted to be. Like ever since I got there, you said, okay, like this is what we're like moving forward, like moving towards in the future. And that's one thing that I always loved. It was like, okay, like you had a core since the very beginning. Like, because I know that, okay, you started even before I was there, and you had an idea of what you want Pura Vida to be and how you wanted to like serve your athletes. And so I don't know, it's just been like so cool seeing like the idea that you had, the dream that you had, and then like as the resources come, then okay, like it's happening, the dream is happening. And so I don't know, it's just been like really special for me to see, because I think that there are so many things like on the outside that are doing the same thing. Like I feel the same way in my career, like as the growth with like Pura Vida, and so it's so cool to just see that. Yeah.
That's amazing. Now, when you start, I remember that you start working with us, and you were like very close to Mark, and you guys were talking about like potentially be a coach and all that. And I remember in Hiawatha when you start training as a coach with Daniel De Leon that week. That was amazing times all the summer. How helped you to be a coach and also to be a player in the same time?
How has coaching helped you in your playing? Yeah.
Let's see. I don't know. It's helped me in a lot of ways, but I think especially like focusing on the details. So like when you're a coach and you have to show somebody a skill, or like you're demonstrating a drill, you have to be able to tell them, okay, like why are we doing this? What is this going to help? And I think that like in my own career as a player, when I don't know, when I do things in a game, in a practice, it's like I also have to ask myself the question, okay, like if I'm doing this in a practice, when am I going to do it in the game? And so it just helps me kind of like connect those two.
Okay.
Now, in the like, because I remember, I'm sorry that I'm asking.
That's
like,
okay.
too much.
Yeah, no, not at all.
Because I'm very excited, because Annie is like she's very close to me, and I remember when Annie started, she was like, well, she's always very athletic. She's always very focused, very decided about her goals as well. But I remember that technical side and the skills and stuff that you never do before, you start to feel more comfortable. And just recently, I see a video of you in Parma making a step over and fake and turning and having that, chasing this girl, and that was amazing. So, like, that's amazing. Can you tell us a little bit how was the process, and maybe for the girls that are training here and trust that path and trust that steps that you take to use your fear and don't be scared about doing those new things.
Yeah, I think that like the journey for me was as much like physical and technical with my feet as it was mental. And so when I first started, and when I was in college, when I was, like trying to figure out, okay, what do I need to get to the next level? A part of me was, if I don't know, tried new things with my feet, or if I had to go back at, I don't know, I was probably 19, 20 years old. If I had to go back at 20 years old and I had trouble doing like a footwork drill that I've seen a 5-year-old do with ease, I struggled with that a little bit in my confidence of like, okay, I should already know this. I should already be this. And I think that I had to change my mindset to always be like a student of the game, if that makes sense, of just like, okay, if you have to go back and do the simplest of simple things, that's okay, and you should love to do it, because the feeling of knowing what you could do before, and then like putting in work, and then seeing where you are now, the feeling of seeing your growth is honestly kind of like an addiction of just like, you learn to love the process and you learn to love like the growth. And so I think that was what helped me to become like a little bit more technical. And obviously I'm still working on that. I'm still working on every part of my game. But I think once you switch the mindset to love learning, to love to be a student of the game, then it's not difficult, it's fun. And every single time that you like put your cleats on, and even if you're working on something that you are honestly terrible at, it's fun because you know that you're doing that to become the player that you were meant to be, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that word is huge for us, like fun, because Pura Vida is fun, and we try to make everything fun, and you got the message, and you learn how to make everything fun. So it's a beautiful process, right?
It sounds like what you're saying too is like the metrics of what you're judging success on.
Yeah.
Is you maybe shifted that for yourself a little bit.
Yeah.
And so then it was the process, and then in the process you became a better player. Right?
Exactly.
Learning the process, right?
Yeah.
It sounds like goal setting for you is huge, right? Like that's part of your process. Like you've set a goal and then you figure out how to get there. Would you say that talk about what's sort of the biggest factor that you would, if you were to attribute something to your success, your trajectory as a soccer player, if you could, whittle it down to one or two things that you think makes a difference for you as a player. Like what has it been for you that is the biggest difference maker?
Okay. I just need to think for a second.
Yeah, no, you can think away, yeah.
The first one is definitely to be, like we talked about, mastery focused. And so I have goals that I set, like of where that I want to be, like maybe like bigger goals that I have. But I really like to focus on mastering like a skill or mastering a certain part of my game. And I think that has allowed me to keep going in a way that where I'm not set back if something happens, I don't know, like with a team, or if I was playing in a place that I didn't really like or I didn't feel like was home and I have to move to another team. Like when you have kind of like a goal of mastery, at mastering yourself, like, okay, as a soccer player, as a person, like how do I become the best soccer player I want to be? How do I become the best person that I want to be? When you're focused on those things, the things that you can't control, they can change, but you are still like your core you, and you're not as affected or devastated, when things on the outside don't work out as they should. So definitely that as number one. And number two, having like an open mind. I think for me, like my parents have always like instilled in me of like, okay, you can have an idea of where you want to go, but like be open to what the moment gives you. And so like, I don't know, like I've learned to like lean on my faith in that, and like just be open to where life takes me. Like I didn't plan to go to, I don't know, 3-4 countries in only a couple years, but that's just where the game took me. That's where God took me. And so I'm just, enjoying that and taking it as it is and being flexible, having an open mind, and yeah.
And you have been working hard for that, right?
Of course, of course.
Yeah, saying that, like, as you are saying, we understand, and I understand, but that way you work and the work ethic you have, it's amazing, and that's where it's taking you, right? And now, like, following a little bit with the next step, that was, Costa Rica and then Iceland, and Iceland and Sweden. How was the experience, and how was the soccer there, and what you learned and what you take from there?
Like going to Iceland and then going to Sweden, like what were like the differences? Well, so I was in Costa Rica because I had like a connection that my college coach had, and so that's how I ended up playing with Saprissa. And then after that, I found my agent through like one of my best friends now. She was close with him, and so we both signed with him in his agency. And right off the bat, he said, okay, like I have this opportunity, this would be really good for you. And that's just kind of how it worked out, the first one. And from playing in Iceland, it's like everything is up to you. It's like, okay, you get this opportunity from your agent. You get to decide like yes or no. Do I want to go here? Do I not want to go here? And then after that, like it's really up to your performance and, you know, like your stats, how you play, because from there, like other opportunities come. And so if you're successful there, then it's possible that you get opportunities to play at a different place. And so my success from Iceland gave me the opportunity to play in Sweden. And yeah, Sweden, I was there half a season, so 6-ish months. And I was just kind of at the point where it was like, okay, I like it here, but is it the best for my growth? And then I don't know, talked with my agent, talked with my parents, like prayed about it. And after that, like I had a different opportunity to go to Italy and play in Serie A at the start of the season. And so that's how I ended up in Italy, at least.
And the level of soccer, how was the level in both countries, like Iceland, well, Costa Rica, Iceland, Sweden, and then now Parma? How you compare now, like the level and what are the difference? Like it's more technical, it's more aggressive, it's more possession, it's more like vertical.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I think obviously growing up in the U.S. and playing like what we call like the U.S. style of play, it's like a lot more direct. And when I played, I feel like I could get away with a lot of things because of my athleticism. Like things with my feet I didn't really have to do because the game was so focused on, okay, like if you're fast, if you're strong, like yes, of course you need technical abilities, but you can get by with those things. And then going to Iceland, the style of play was like similar to the US, a little bit more technical, tactical, but it was a good stepping stone for me. And then when I got to Sweden, that was kind of where the culture shock happened the most, just with like tactics. I would say the most, like, yes, that technical aspect for me has always been there when I changed teams, but as far as preparing for a game, like scouting, that was something in Sweden that I hadn't really dealt with before. I wasn't used to, I don't know, like making a game plan offensively, defensively, based on how the other team is going to play, you know, talking about angles of passes, talking about, yeah, when to play the pass in this game, and then in the next game it might not work. And so I would say like that was like my big shock as a player, and it took me a lot of time to adjust. And then by the time I got to Italy, I thought that it was going to be another step, another easy step that I could take forward for my game, but it was one of the hardest things that I've had to do as an athlete. Again, going back to a tactical and a technical difference, because, okay, if you're in Italy, you're playing with a lot of Italians, like, yes, other foreign players, but you're playing with people who grew up playing football in a certain way, and you come in as an outsider, and passes that I would make, they wouldn't necessarily make that their first choice. And so I had to learn a lot and grow a lot in that way of just like, okay, how do I keep my identity as a soccer player, as a football player, but how do I mesh with the style and the environment that I'm in? So
that's great. And talking about Italy, are these girls like very aggressive, and are these girls like, because I see different like countries there, like one girl from Argentina, one girl from...
Yeah. The last year, I think we had 13 or 14 foreign players, and obviously a good amount of Italians. This year we have 5 foreigners. But, oh wait, I forgot what we were talking about. Sorry, hold on.
How tough the girls are, what's the play is, like what in terms of like level. Okay. Yeah, you're doing amazing, by the way. You are doing really amazing.
Thanks. Sorry, I forgot for a second where my train of thought was going. Just to talk about like what I see in the kind of more like Italian style in the Italian league. And I mean, you can see it in the national team as well, with how their national team plays, is that they are very tactical, very technical. And just like cheeky in the way of just like, okay, when they're on the ball, they're comfortable on the ball, patient on the ball, and creative. And so I think that that's like a trademark for Italian style is always being technical, preparing really well for games, and being tactically disciplined. Yeah, and I think that shows throughout all of the leagues in Italy.
How you guys are doing this year?
This year, so last year we were in Serie A. We got relegated. I stayed with Parma, and now we are sitting towards the top. We are in the third position, 2 points from first, and so our goal is definitely promotion.
And how many games left do you guys have to play?
We are 1/3 of the way. No, I think 1/3 of the way through the season, and we play 30 games total. And you just play every team twice, home and away, and then at the end of the season, first place team goes directly to Serie A. Second place team plays a playout with the 9th place team in Serie A, and then you play one home, one away to see who will go in Serie A.
Tell us your feelings about relegation and promotion then, in general, because it's not something we have here in the U.S.
Yeah, I think that it adds a competitive component to the league. Like there's a definite survival, kind of like sense of survival of, okay, like last year we were towards the bottom some games, like moving up other games, like in every point was important last year. And so when it comes down to crunch time, to the last couple games of the season, to where you know, okay, we have to win this game or we're in danger of relegation, like that is a different kind of mentality that you need to have. And it's a lot of pressure, and it's, I mean, good pressure in the sense of like, okay, it's worth fighting for. You know, you're in Serie A, you want to stay in Serie A. And so the success, like being successful when you know that, you know, there's relegation to fight for is an amazing feeling. But also on the other hand, being so close to relegation and actually getting relegated is like, just leaves like a bad taste in your mouth, you know? So.
I mean, Gemma, you've been to Europe. I think I'm European as well. Like, there's a sense of pride, right? Because a lot of these clubs are so old, there's a history behind them, and the fan base is also, you know, attached to them for a long time. Relegation is a prideful thing.
Yeah.
And so is promotion, and it's also the historical prestige that you lose, right? Or that you have to stand by. I don't know in the case of Parma, but there's a lot of clubs that, you know, Costa Rica, is that the same too, relegation?
Yeah, it is.
I had a question. I don't know how much of a chance you've had to actually see younger girls in Parma or in Sweden or in Iceland, anywhere in Europe, and how will you contrast to the development they have going on there versus the development that you see here at Pura Vida and you've seen growing up in Minnesota?
So the big like difference, I guess, in youth development between here and in Europe is definitely like college soccer. So here, the pathway that most young girls take is that they go to college, and then after college, professional. And some people, they only want to play professional in the US, which I understand. And if that's not a possibility, then they say, okay, like that's good, that's done. And now, like a growing number of girls, like we've seen it in the NWSL. The NWSL is signing more and more young talents, and girls are deciding, okay, like I want to be a professional soccer player. But the reality of that is that that has only been a possibility for so many young girls for a handful of years. Like if you can imagine, like the NWSL as a league, because this is the NWSL. In the US, it's like the third try, okay, of a professional league in the US. And so it's like relatively young compared to, I don't know, other leagues in Europe and even like the men's side in the US. And so for a teenager to decide, okay, like, am I gonna get enough money here to make it a career if I just skip college and go professionally? Like, that has been a change in the US. For the past couple of years, and I think it's like really good for the professional system in the US. But one benefit that I would say that younger girls have in Europe is that they have the opportunity to train within a club that could potentially be their senior club in the future, if that makes sense. And so the club has age groups from every team. And of course, you can train in your age group, but some girls at, like 15, 16, 17, even like younger 20s, they have the potential to train with the first team. And I think that that's really, really good from a development standpoint, because as you're young, you know what the expectations are of you when you get into the senior team. And so I think development in that way and playing against, the best of the best talent and having a vision, having an idea of, okay, what it looks like to be at the next level, I think that that's like amazing for, the young talent in Europe.
So it's like if you say that Minnesota United has a woman team, like
Right.
and they have an academy and they go that way.
And that team is 100 years old, or that club is 100 years old. Just to go back to Pura Vida real quick,
Yeah.
would you mind speaking, because I don't think we've quite touched on this yet. We talked a little bit about you as a coach, but as a player, what do you think that Pura Vida helped you with or allowed you to do or has stayed with you in your journey since you've trained here at the very beginning?
Okay, one thing that I will start off saying is that like Pura Vida, like the training here and the decision to train here has been like one of the biggest blessings on my career, but it's also like difficult in the sense that like here, for the first time of any training that I've ever had, I've been pushed in a way like out of my comfort zone, and that's where I've seen the most growth, if that makes sense. So, we talked about me, like my technical, like, okay, technical ability would be like a weakness in my game and has been. And so when I first came to Pura Vida, they were like, okay, do this technical drill. And in my mind, I'm like, okay, but I'm not good at that. But Danny's like, okay, we do it anyway. And just like from that aspect of like, okay, I had something that I was so uncomfortable doing, and I came here and I did it every day. Or every time I came in to train, like I worked on those things that were my weaknesses, and now I'm starting to turn them into like strengths. So.
Going back to thinking about the young girls in Europe or here, first of all, do you think of yourself as a role model? And then secondly, regardless of if you think of yourself as that way, what would you want young players, when they think of you, what would you want them to think of you as a role model?
I mean, I'd like to think of myself as a role model. I know that, when I was younger, I looked up to girls who were doing what I was doing, and so I'd like to think of myself as the same. But one thing that I would like, I don't know, to be like known as, remembered by, is what we talked about earlier, of just like always having that learning attitude of never being afraid to have a weakness. That's how I want to be remembered, of like, okay, my soccer journey, I know looks different than so many others. Like, I know that I didn't start off playing, I didn't get all this technical development. And before, I used to hide that and say, okay, like disqualify myself of, okay, when I was younger, I didn't train technically. I didn't train tactically. I didn't know what any of that was. But now I see it in the strength of like, I'm 26 and I'm still learning every day of my career. And I think that that's what I want to be my trademark as like, okay, it doesn't matter the age, it doesn't matter the point in my career, but every day I'm getting better and every day I'm learning something to add to my game. So.
Can I ask you a question about what you mentioned about mastery? So I think that you didn't necessarily mention anything specifically, that you actually focused on mastering. What are the things that you had to master? I mean, you have to master so much stuff in soccer, but what are the things that you had to master or that you've actually devoted to mastering to be successful, and how much Pura Vida helped you to help master those things?
Okay, I see. I understand.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that, and like obviously Ken can speak for this too. When you go to another country and you're completely overwhelmed by the differences in like culture and like just like everything about living, and then you step foot on the soccer field, football field, and you see all the differences there, like you really have to focus on, okay, there's a lot that I need to change, or there's a lot of things that I do differently that they, you know, they want me to change. And so you have to pick like a couple of things of like, okay, these are going to be my bread and butter of things that I'm going to change in my game, or the things that I want to be really good at. And for me, for an example, as a defender, I really had to learn like patience in defending. And so I know that like in college and even sometimes throughout my career, like I was very impatient in defending, and I would step in too early, or I would, you know, like step to try to win a ball and leave a gap behind me. And so one thing that I've really focused on mastering is my defensive timing of, okay, like knowing when to keep the ball in front of me, knowing when to step in to win the ball, knowing when to drop and staying with the line. That would definitely be one technical thing that I had to master. And like on the offensive side would just be like, yeah, again, decision making offensively. And so playing on the left side, which my left foot is not my dominant foot, I tried to master, you know, just playing a simple pass with my left foot down the line. Yeah. And mastering those little things, like once you master one, then you can move on to the next, and then the next, and then you find your game like growing more and you become a more complete player.
As far as mental performance, because you know Pura Vida also focuses on that, what is the one obstacle or the one thing within mental performance that you would recommend the girls to or our boys to focus on? Because I mean, I've seen a lot of kids, my son included, like they get really frustrated, right?
Yeah.
They have a challenge, it's like I'm not going to be able to do this, or they see somebody else, there's no way I can do that, or so they, for some reason, we all have that sort of self or negative talk. What is the one thing for mental performance that anybody, whether it's goalkeeper, defender, midfielder, forward, striker, can actually should devote time to mastering to be successful? Like, I'm sure you've gone through much of that.
Yeah, no, this is actually a great question because I'm in the process of getting my master's in sports psychology. And so I've been studying this, and then I've also like lived this as a football player. But one little piece of advice that I would give young players, and I guess of any age, is to be in the moment, focus on the moment, because I know, you know, we have emotions, like we have good emotions like happiness, joy, but we also have frustration and disappointment. But the best thing that we can do for ourselves as footballers is to focus on the present moment, and especially with mistakes. When we focus on the present, the mistake that we made 10 seconds ago, 5 minutes ago, that doesn't matter if we're focused on what we're doing now. And, you know, it helps us to be a little bit more kind to ourselves, because I know that so many of us are perfectionists of, okay, we know that we're capable of doing so much better than the mistake that we made. But when we focus on, okay, I made a mistake, I'm going to take a deep breath in, I'm going to breathe out, and I'm going to focus on what I'm doing right now, it actually allows us to be a little bit more steady with those emotions.
How do you do that yourself?
For myself, it's taken a lot of practice because I am really hard on myself, but I try a lot with positive self-talk of, okay, if I make a mistake, okay, it's like taking that deep breath in, taking that deep breath out, and I tell myself, like, because you have to talk to yourself, you have to tell yourself, you know, on to the next one. It's okay. Like, you know what you're doing, you're great, you have the experience, and keep going.
Has Pura Vida helped you in that area? Specifically when you mentioned earlier about Danny pushing you to do things that you thought you were not going to be able to do.
Yeah, I think that like training with Pura Vida and coaching with Pura Vida, we've never expected anyone to be perfect. And I think that that's a really important point as far as, you know, like with football itself, because when you try to be perfect, then you can't be as creative as you want to be. And so I think that creativity flows so freely here is because we don't require people to be the perfect footballers. What we require here is, okay, we want people to come and work hard, have a good attitude, be ready to learn, and then try new things. And so I think that Pura Vida is, like, I know that's something that you guys focus on now, that we focused on when I was coaching, is just like, okay, we want people to try new things. We want them to experience success in new ways. And so we don't, require perfection.
That's great. I have 3 last questions.
3?
Yeah, 'cause we gotta train.
Yeah, you gotta
Kids
train.
are
Yeah, they're
training.
waiting.
So, well, one is, what do you miss the most? Because obviously, in all the teams have the team environment. I don't know if they have their own staff to do technical and personal and customized training. That's one. Second one is, what are your goals? What is next for you? And the third one, and I'll let you know later.
Okay, so the first one is, what do I miss most about Pura Vida when I'm training or when I'm in Italy? Okay. I think that what I miss most about being here is just the ability and freedom that I have to say, okay, to, talk to you or talk to one of the coaches and say, this is what I want to work on. And, I don't know how to work on it, but this is what I want to be better at. Giving that to you and like trusting you with that. And then being able to have a training session where you see, okay, this is how we get better at that certain skill. This is how we get better at that. And so I miss that. Definitely the guidance and making it personal for me and helping me just be able to be free to be like, okay, this is what I want to work on, hand it to you, and then, be able to do my thing, I guess.
Awesome.
What's next?
What is next?
What's next for
What's
Annie
next?
Williams?
I think right now, for me personally, what I want for myself is so wrapped up with Parma, and so I think number one goal is promotion to Serie A. I want that for myself. Also want it for the club and the team. But for me personally, as far as long-term goals, I'm really trying to focus on being present, and as far as like skill-wise, I'm trying to be the best footballer I can be and then go from there. So instead of being like, okay, I want to play on this certain team or in this country or in this division, I am really putting like all my efforts into the work that I'm doing every day, during practice, after practice, during games. And then when I have time to like breathe and think about it at the end of the season, then I will reevaluate and go from there, because I don't want to set a ceiling for myself and say, okay, like this is the best that you can do. But I also, I want to give myself the freedom of taking the path that's right for me at the moment.
That's
What's your
great.
final
And
question?
my final question is like the adaptation, because I know, well, all your family is here and your boyfriend's here, and how you do that, how you do that, because it's difficult.
Yeah.
It's like all that is for me the most difficult thing.
Yeah. It's definitely a sacrifice being away from my family, my boyfriend, like my friends, and just everything that I'm used to. Because, it's like we grow up here, we're so used to life in this certain way. But I think that the sacrifice is worth it in the fact that, okay, I know I'm having fun. I know that I love going to new countries and experiencing new cultures, and I love having football for my job. Like at the end of the day, like knowing my job is the best job for me at this moment right now is like what makes the sacrifice worth it, for sure.
Yeah, that's an honor for us to train with you. And I was reading this phrase that says, when your goals are more important than a party, welcome to the 100% of the club.
No, exactly.
So a lot of people who are your age and they have goals and they have dreams, sometimes they just take their view and their path and their steps in their own way. And since I met you, you always have the same pattern, the same discipline, the same dreams, always fighting and always being a role model. So for us, it's always a privilege to have you here and train with you. So
Thanks.
thank you so much. I don't know if you guys.
Yeah, go ahead, Jim.
No, you go ahead. I want to make sure. Yeah, no, go ahead.
That was a silly question. Like, if you, all of these girls that train here, they're on their 16s or under. Like, if you remember Annie Williams when she was like 14, what would you say to her?
Wow.
Just imagine that you're looking at yourself when you were 14.
Okay. Me to 14-year-old self is, gosh, no. I have to say two things. I can't say one thing. Okay. First thing is just like be patient. Don't try to control the things that you can't control. When you focus on the things that you can control, then you're a lot happier. So you can't move the things on the outside. But you can definitely move and control the things on the inside. And then one more thing that I would say, be kind to yourself, whether that's like making mistakes or, like you don't have to be on 100% of the time when you're 14, 15, 16 years old. Like give the dedication and the love to the game that it deserves, but in your free time, like be a kid, like have fun. Because like being a complete person and having like more than one aspect of your life makes you actually more successful on the field. Yeah.
That's awesome. I love
My
that.
final thing, you don't get away without saying nothing in Italian. So give us some Italian phrase. It could be, how would you say, like to your teammates, like we got to drop back in and defend tighter, or how do you say we got to push out and transition to offense faster? Just give us some sort of something you'd say in Italian.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. Your motive. Yeah, stay present. Yeah, always, keep growing, always learning something. Yeah.
No. Okay. I'm not going to do any of that, but I'm going to give you
perfect.
something else.
You get to do whatever you want. Yes.
No, it's a phrase that Italians use a lot. And it's just kind of like, okay, going with the process, like continuing on, like step by step. And it's piano piano.
Piano, piano.
Piano, piano.
Piano, piano.
All right.
Vida,
I love it.
¿Cómo se dice pura vida en italiano? Vida es bella, vida bella, vita bella.
Pura vida. I would say it's pura vida.
Yeah.